Welcome in, my unraveled friends. I'm Tiff. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're coming back to hang out with me, I'm super glad that you did. Are you guys ready? Huston Danker's trial starts tomorrow. I'm going to try my absolute best to cover every detail. It's gonna be a tough go because I'm gonna have to listen while I'm at work and take notes and all of that stuff, but we're gonna do it. We did it with Karina. We're gonna do it again. I wanted to just kind of put this video out as a little refresher and kind of go into a little bit of detail about Huston Danker, who he was, what role did he play, what's his defense, which we probably know the answer to that already, but I just wanted to do this today before trial starts tomorrow. If you want like a longer deep dive of the case itself, I will link that one in my outro in this video. But for today, let's refresh our brains a little bit and get ready for trial. Yeah, let's unravel. So the day that we're talking about here was June 18th, 2021. Our victim's name is Ryan Cooper. He was a 42-year-old farmer, devoted father of four, deeply loved, deeply rooted in this rural Traer, Iowa community. People still just hold him in such high regard, and they remember him as a loving dad who absolutely adored his kids. He was a hard worker, jack of all trades. He showed up for absolutely everyone. And Ryan's life was very brutally cut short on that day, June 18th of 2021, right in his own home in Traer, Iowa. So 911 dispatchers get a call from Karina Cooper, which was absolutely banana nut bread. I mean, it was bonkers to listen to. They played it at her trial and it was insane. She was inconsolable. She couldn't form a single word or sentence. She was unable to communicate absolutely anything to first responders. Before she had called 911, she called Ryan's brother, Aaron Cooper. So Aaron was also on the phone with 911 and on his way, because according to what he had heard on the call with Karina, all he could hear was like, intruder, someone's here. He grabbed his gun, he got in his truck, and he hauled ass over there, okay, and called 911 on his way. So first responders arrive to this scene, and what do they see? They see Karina Cooper sitting on top of her husband's body, nestling her face in his face, which is where he suffered the fatal wounds. It was 2 gunshots to Ryan Cooper's face. Karina was on top of him. She was in clear emotional distress, screaming, incoherent, just could not say anything, struggling immensely to give any clear answers whatsoever. And they focused on this quite a bit during her trial, saying that it was quite an unusual reaction, even for someone in her position, right? Even for someone that they would think would rightfully be in shock. It was still something first responders had never really seen. They had never really witnessed that kind of behavior before. It was also talked about a lot in her trial that she was not trying to administer aid. When first responders arrived, she wasn't begging them to administer aid. And Aaron Cooper, Ryan's brother, he's a firefighter. And Karina knows that this is what he does. He is a first responder. And not one time, not on the phone, not when he arrived, did Karina ever ask for aid from him either. It was a bizarre scene. It was a strange scene, and it was a sad scene. Ryan Cooper had lost his life right there in his own home with his 3 children in the home. The investigation kind of very quickly zeroed in on Karina and Huston being mentioned as someone that people maybe were talking about as a small town, right? Word travels fast. It's not like where I live, where like nobody knows anybody here. Everybody just kind of does their own thing. But in those small, close-knit communities, word travels fast. And I guess there had been a little bit of talk about Karina and possibly Huston Danker having an affair. And this was mentioned to police on the day that Ryan was killed by, I believe, Aaron Cooper, when police were questioning him after all of this happened. Huston Danker was half Karina Cooper's age. I think he was 23 at the time that all of this happened. And he was later arrested in April of 2024. So while I think their attention was there very early on, they were kind of suspicious and zeroed in on these two. It did take almost 2.5 years before any charges were ever brought up on either of these individuals. So it did take them a long time to build their case and get the evidence and the information that they needed in order to move forward with this prosecution. Huston Danker met Karina Cooper at her salon. She kind of dabbled in a few things as well. Hair, some art, and tattoos and those kinds of things. And she had a salon set up in their shop on the property. And that is where Huston apparently met Karina. Now, in Karina Cooper's trial, she did take the stand in her own defense. She denied adamantly any direct involvement with Ryan's murder. Her finger pointed solely, squarely at Huston Danker. She called their relationship an online fantasy. She claimed that Huston had been threatening her for years. She did on the stand admit to knowing all along that it was Huston. She knew from the beginning, but that she just couldn't say anything to police because she was in fear for her own life, that Huston had been threatening her and she couldn't speak up. Karina on the stand would admit to flirting with Huston Danker, but states that their relationship was strictly online, except for that one time that it wasn't strictly online and it became physical. And at that time, Karina said that she cut off any in-person contact from that moment forward, because she felt disgusted. And she was in complete fear of jeopardizing her marriage to Ryan. She says, I didn't want to leave Ryan. I didn't want our marriage to end. Certainly didn't want him harmed in any way. And even goes on to allege that Huston Danker was jealous of her marriage and that he had explicitly talked about killing Ryan in their text messages before, but that she just like laughed them off. It was a joke, like, oh, you know how people just say stuff like that, right? I would just kind of go along with it or blow it off. Okay, girl. Huston Danker's account of his relationship with Karina directly contradicts any of the evidence that we later were privy to during this trial. But on the day that police got word of this guy Huston Danker's name, they brought him in for questioning, and they were asking him about his relationship with Karina, and he described himself as like her gay bestie. Not that he says, I am a straight man, but that's like what our relationship is akin to, right? Like she was just like, she could tell me anything, and I was just like, not interested in her whatsoever. It was just like we were just like besties, Well, we found out very quickly that that wasn't true. So prosecution in the Karina Cooper trial, right? We have Assistant District Attorney Israel Kodiaga, who I love to watch in action, and Assistant District Attorney Michael Ringel. Both of them were they were sharp, they were on it. They laid the case out in a very, meticulous way. It was easy to follow. It was easy to keep up with them and what they were presenting as what had happened here. Mr. Kodiaga presents during Karina Cooper's trial that the motive was not just the romance between 46-year-old Karina Cooper or 44, I'm not sure, mid-40 Karina Cooper and half her age young lover Huston Danker, but that there was also the motive of a very hefty $500,000 life insurance policy that she was the beneficiary for in the event of Ryan's death. I mean, the evidence that they presented, obviously, lots of digital communications, more specifically Snapchat messages, allegedly showing, well, not really allegedly, in my opinion. I mean, if you don't know, Karina Cooper was found guilty by a jury of her peers just a few weeks ago. And so I feel comfortable saying that these text messages, at least in my opinion, show very clearly that Karina Cooper expressed a desire for Orion's death, and that there was some planning there. So just go back all the way to like March of 2021 that they were able to recover. I'm sure they probably went back farther, but the ones they were able to recover went back as far as March of 2021, where, Karina and Huston were planning to be a family. She was dehumanizing Ryan in these text messages, stating that, like, she referred to him as the sperm donor, and then would refer to Huston Danker as the father, as daddy, when talking about her and Ryan's shared children, 3 children that they had. It was, Karina's defense did fight back hard. Nicole Watt was Karina's defense attorney. Nicole argued that Huston Danker was the sole killer, that Huston Danker exploited Karina's very vulnerable emotional state, saying that he had her convinced she was just living in this dream world. She was just, swept off her feet by this young, handsome, smooth talker, Huston Danker, and she was just, completely manipulated by him. Nicole Watt also insisted that Anna didn't want Ryan dead and she didn't need his money, which they showed evidence of there being a large portion of that money in a trust for their shared children. I mean, there was a couple $100,000 that was not there any longer. She ended, in her closing, reiterates to the jury that, there is nobody riding off into the sunset, into the mountains here, right? Huston Danker killed Ryan Cooper, period. We're back. So who is this guy? Who is this handsome, debonair, sweet-talking ladies' man that convinced this woman, who had her living in a fantasy world, who had her feeling like her already quite good-looking, handsome, hard-working, amazing father, wonderful human being of man, just wasn't good enough for her anymore. Who is this guy? Well, this guy is Huston Danker. Huston Danker, according to some, seemed quite the unlikely murder suspect. According to others, not so much. Huston Danker has lifelong connections to the Tama area. He was the son, he is the son of local farmers. He held a job at Nolan Farms at the time of his arrest, was reportedly earning a solid $80,000 a year, according to some reports. I don't know if that's true, but I need to move to Traer if that's the kind of money we're working with here. Sole provider for his entire family. In fact, just 12 days before he was arrested, Danker and his partner, her name is Megan. I don't know if I think it's libeled or Liebold. I'm not sure. Megan, I'm sorry for butchering that. They had taken a major step in their relationship. They had bought a nearly, just according to reports, again, I'm not 100% sure, but a nearly $400,000 home in like this golf course community, had quite a hefty mortgage. And so I feel like maybe the portrait that the defense will try to paint, the picture that they'll want the jury to see, is this hardworking man building this conventional life with the good job and deep community roots and everything to lose, right? So why would he do this? The prosecution, however, armed with Mr. Kodiaga and Mr. Ringel, because they are also prosecutors in this case, as well as the judge, Lars Anderson, who I also adored, just such a gentle soul. He seemed so kind and accommodating for both sides. I really liked him a lot. Anyway, prosecution will, however, paint a very starkly different picture, one that will be pieced together from a very vast and damning digital shadow. They are going to argue that behind this entire facade of stability, Huston Danker was living a double life, revolving around this affair with this older married woman, and that he planned to get rid of the one person, he and she, together, standing in their way. So before Huston Danker faces a jury, his alleged co-conspirator, Karina Cooper, already has. Her trial served as kind of like a full dress rehearsal for this entire case, right? The prosecution, who have, as I've already stated, Israel Kodiaga and Michael Ringel, they laid out this entire theory already of love and romance and money. They argued that the couple plotted to kill Ryan Cooper to collect on his life insurance policies, which totaled over $500,000, and then start this life together. Karina, as I said, took the stand. She pointed the finger at Huston Danker 100%, claiming he was a manipulative lover who pulled her into this fantasy world and acted completely alone. Okay. The jury didn't believe her. Did you? Did you guys follow the case, or like, I have a whole thing. Go back. If you don't know anything about this case, I'm telling you, watch the deep dive. And then literally every day after that, I started the deep dive, same as I'm doing here, the day before Karina's trial started. And then every day after that, I followed it to the very end. Even did a couple really fun collaborations with Kathy over at Gossip, Rumor, and Innuendo. And if you guys don't know her or follow her, you should. She is a riot. She's hilarious. Anyway, and then we followed it all the way through to the verdict, talked about it. You know, you should if you don't know anything about the case already. Why is my microphone facing? Can you guys hear me? Please don't tell me I have to do all that over again. We're gonna make it work because I'm tired. After just like, I think it was like 3 hours and 40 minutes or something like that of deliberation, the jury came back and found Karina Cooper guilty of first-degree murder, which, as I've learned since then, is a conviction in Iowa that carries a mandatory sentence of life without parole, period. Her sentencing is coming up, but that apparently is like, that's just what it is. So now the jury in Danker's trial is not allowed to be told, it's not allowed to be mentioned that Karina was found guilty of this crime already. But I mean, the impact of her trial, I feel like, is pretty undeniable, right? It's the same prosecution team now, fresh off this victory, this prosecution of Karina Cooper. They will face Danker. It's the same judge, as I stated, Lars G. Anderson Love, who's already very deeply familiar with every piece of evidence, which they'll probably reintroduce in this trial. Imagine it's all a lot of the same evidence. Judge Anderson will preside. And then the state is entering the courtroom with this kind of already tested roadmap for conviction here. And then facing them is Huston Danker's chosen counsel. His name is Leon F. Spies. Apparently, he's a very highly regarded Iowa City defense attorney, and he's known for taking on very difficult, high-profile cases. So the stage is set for a very high-stakes legal showdown, and I'm going to follow absolutely every second of it. So one major thing, I'm very anxious to see how this plays out, right? When Huston Danker was arrested, okay, it's a single sentence that is kind of tucked away in the criminal complaint that was filed on the day of his arrest. And that single sentence alleges that, quote, Huston Danker told investigators that he planned and assisted Karina Cooper with the shooting death of Ryan Cooper. But his plea is not guilty. If this is true, it's a confession, right? It directly supports the state's charge that he acted in concert with Karina. It obviously goes on to speak to willfulness, deliberateness, and premeditation required for a first-degree murder conviction in the state of Iowa and in most states, right? There has to be that sort of like deliberate, premeditated, if that's what first-degree murder is in most states. And so my question is, does this alleged confession not present like a huge problem for the defense? Like, are we not talking about it? I don't understand. I wasn't able to find, and it's not to say that it's not there. There's just, documents, massive amounts of stuff goes into all of the pretrial hearings and all of that. And so, I mean, but overall, he has pleaded not guilty and is planning like an alibi defense, right? Yeah, I think that his claim is that he was at his parents' house when the murder happened. And I don't know. It's like, can you have an alibi for a crime that you confess to planning. Is this alleged confession? Is it that's in the criminal complaint? Is this not allowed in court? I don't know. We're gonna see. I feel like that's kind of going to be like at the center of this trial for all of us. Like, we've already seen the digital stuff. It'll just be it'll be an interesting aspect to see what they do. So with this alleged confession, and then they have this mountain of digital evidence against Huston Danker, his attorney, Leon Spies, has crafted an unconventional defense. It lies in two main pillars here. First is the alibi. So the defense has formally stated that at the time that the murder took place, Huston Danker was at his parents' farm. And the crazy part is that on the defense list of witnesses, right, the people that are going to be called to prove this were prosecution witnesses in the first trial. It's not his parents or people that are close to him. It's the state's own investigators. We have Tama County Detective Trevor Killian is supposedly going to testify about Houston's whereabouts. I think he is on the list. DCI Special Agent Holly Witt, she was also a state investigator and a witness in the first trial against Karina Cooper. And then digital forensics detective Tiffany Lord, who we heard from a couple of times in Karina Cooper's trial on the state side. The plan is for them to be able to build this digital alibi. I imagine that they are coming on because they have to say obviously they have to say. They're coming on the defense's side because they have to say what the evidence showed. And I imagine that it was very difficult. But go back and watch the deep dive. I mean, it was like they very kind of carefully planned, allegedly, Houston's phone activity before he headed to Karina's house. He was like, okay, I'm cutting my phone off now and I'm leaving it at home. Now, when I leave your house, I need you to text me. And when I get home, I'll turn my phone back on. Like, there was that evidence in the Snapchat messages. So I imagine that these investigators are being called because they have to testify to what they were actually able to show, which defense is hoping will go, will go with the picture that they're trying to paint, that like you can't prove that Houston was there because his phone, look at this digital evidence. The phone was at his parents' house the whole time. I am really holding my breath here and crossing my fingers because, and you know what? I have faith that those cross examinations will be revealing, because Mr. Kodiaga and Mr. Ringolo, they'll be able to get to the bottom of that. I feel like they're good at that. It's just crazy because the defense plans to use the state's own experts to show that, like, cell tower data, GPS logs, and all of these other electronic footprints place Danker's phone, and therefore must be Danker himself, miles away from the crime scene. So it's a very high risk but high reward gamble that the defense is taking, and it could either completely dismantle the prosecution's case or it could collapse entirely on itself. We'll have to see. And then, of course, the second pillar of defense, I feel like here, is going to make Karina Cooper out to be the sole perpetrator in this case, the shooter herself. Her conviction is off limits, yes, but defense has made sure that they have the right to argue that she was the one responsible for her husband's death entirely, and they will likely use many of her own words against her. Her lies to the police, her very suspicious delay in calling 911, her direct financial motives as the beneficiary to his insurance policies. They are going to try to convince this jury that Danker was not her partner, but her patsy, her scapegoat. Okay. So as the trial begins tomorrow, the jury will be asked to navigate this maze of conflicting narratives. Was the digital trail a blueprint for murder, or was it just some weird, bizarre fantasy that they were living? I don't know. Was the shoe print that was found at the scene, that was said to be consistent with Huston Danker's vans, was that a definitive link to this crime? Was the request for his friend to hold his guns, was that just an innocent favor? Or was it his attempt to hide their murder weapon? We'll have to see. And what of Karina Cooper, the convicted murderer at the center of it all, who took the stand in her own defense? Will she be called to testify? And if she is, will she stick to her story? Will she revoke it? Will she switch it up completely? Who knows? Her decision here, I think, is a wild card. I'm I can't wait to see if she takes the stand. Though she doesn't really have a good, what's the word I'm looking for? She wasn't really good at it the first time. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But in the end, the jury has to decide here who Huston Danker truly is. Is he the man that that the state is portraying him to be? A cold, calculating killer who conspired with his lover and confessed his role to the police and then left a trail of his murderous intent all over the internet, right? Those Google searches. Do you guys remember those? Crazy. Or is he the man that his defense will likely put forward? He's a naive young man manipulated him? No, this woman's twice his age. She was the manipulator. She manipulated him. Was he that? Was he this man building a life with his family who was just kind of ensnared in this deadly web of manipulative older woman, and now he's facing life in prison without parole for a crime that he didn't even commit? I don't know. The 12 people in that jury box will have to decide his fate. Ultimately, I believe both of these human beings should be put away, life in prison, no chance of parole. I believe they both planned and carried out this murder, and I believe wholeheartedly that this will be part 2 on the road to justice for Ryan Cooper. That is what we are all rooting for here. That is the basis. That is the reason for all of this. Fuck these two shitheads. Ryan Cooper deserves his justice, and we are on the road to that. Again, as always, I will remain open-minded. I will look at the evidence. Granted, I saw so much in the Karina Cooper trial. It's like the evidence is already there. I already know what the backstory is here. I already have all of these Snapchat messages and all of this stuff in my mind. I already have the weapons that Huston took to a coworker, and that ended up being forensically proven to be the weapon that I have enough to have already formed my opinion. However, I'm open as always. If someone can change my mind, I am 100% willing to listen to the arguments. But ultimately, all I want is for Ryan's family, loved ones, friends, community to have the closure that they deserve and the justice that Ryan deserves. That is the end goal here, whatever form that comes in. So now we're ready for trial, guys. We're prepped and ready. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, for being here with me, for supporting me, encouraging me. I get, you guys just, I love you. I'm so, the comments that I get is it's kind of encouraging me to like keep going and not give up on myself. Those kinds of things. Just like what's keeping me going. And I'm so happy you guys are here, and I'm so happy you'll be here with me for another trial. Let's do it together. I'm excited. Till I see you guys tomorrow for Huston Danker trial day 1. Until then, please stay safe, keep asking questions, and keep unraveling. Love you.